Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to work on equations of a circle. And this is kind of easy, but a little confusing. There's a couple things that people always do wrong, and I'll go over that. There's two things. I'm going to go over 4 problems with you, which are on the next 2 pages. But the first one actually is a trick question, so I'm going to do the second, third, and fourth first. And then I'll go back and do the first one, if that's okay with everybody here. So the equation for a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. And this right here is where people make a mistake, and also these 2 minus signs. So I'm going to explain that right now. Since the minus sign is in the formula, whatever number ends up in those parentheses, you're going to change the sign when you're looking for the center, okay? And I'll explain that in a minute. But the center is going to be the h and the k, and r is the radius. So this, remember, is r squared. So what do you have to do to r squared to get an r? You have to square root it, okay? So let's say I have an equation of x minus 17 squared plus y minus, plus 10 squared equals 9. So if we have a 9 there, that's the radius squared. So I need to find the center, and I need to find the radius. And then we'll show you how to graph it in a minute. So the center is going to be HK. And remember that minus sign is in the formula right here. So we're going to change the sign of the negative 17 to a positive 17. And we're going to change the sign of the positive 10 to a negative 10. Okay? And the radius would be the square root of 9, which is 3. It's not 9 squared. When you go to graph these in your homework, if they don't fit in your graph, you're doing something wrong with the radius usually, or you're not changing the signs on those 2 numbers in the parentheses, okay? So let's say I want to graph this. Negative 1710 would be way out left 17 and up 10 right here somewhere. And if the radius is 3, you go to the right 3, to the left 3, up 3, and down 3, and you draw your circle. So let's say we have another equation, and let's write the main equation here again. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And let's say my equation is x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 5. Okay, so we have our center, and that is the opposite of that positive 2, which is negative 2, and the opposite of that negative 3, which is positive 3. And the radius is the square root of 5. So when we go to graph that, we find the square root of 5 is square root of 5? It's 2.23, so 2 1/4 about. So when we do that, we graph the center, which is negative 2, 3, right here. And then we go a little bit over 2 to the left, a little bit over 2 to the right, a little bit over 2 up, and a little bit over 2 down. And we draw our circle, okay? So if the radius is square root of 5, that's 2.23. You count the blocks. 2 blocks to the right, left, up, and down, plus a little bit more, plus 1/4 of a block. Let's start on number 2. Number 2 is also kind of a trick question because there's nothing in the parentheses next to the x before it got squared. So if you look at that, you could also write that as x minus 0 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4. So whenever you see a plain x squared or y squared, that means the number inside the parenthesis is a 0. So we have that the center is 0, 3. Remember, we're changing the sign, but 0 doesn't have a sign. It's always positive. There's no such thing as a negative 0. And then negative 3 turns to a positive 3. And the radius would be the square root of 4, which is 2. Don't forget to square root that number in the equation to make it a 2, okay? So we go to 0, 3, which is right here. We draw that point, and we go 2 to the right, 2 to the left, 2 up, and 2 down, and we draw our circle, and we're done. Let's go to the next one. So on number 1, the center is pretty easy. It's going to be -1, -3, changing the signs. That's your center. And your radius is going to be the square root of 2, which is 1.41. That's almost 1.5. So we do -1, -3, and we go over like 1.5 this way, 1.5 that way, 1.5 that way, and 1.5 this way, and it's this little circle down here. So some of you are having trouble sending me your work. Just take a picture of your work and send it to me. If you're graphing and you don't have graph paper, if you have a printer at home, you can print graph paper off the internet. If not, just be very methodical on how you graph it. If you can print my worksheet, that would be great, because some of you are going to have trouble graphing these without graph paper. But tomorrow we're going to find the equation given other information. So I'll see you tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions. I can Zoom with you. I only have a meeting with Miss Stam this morning at 8:30. These next two are pretty basic. If you look at the equation up here that they give you, the center is going to be 2, 3, opposite signs of the -2 and the -3. And the radius is the square root of 16, which is 4. So we go 2, 3. We go over 4, left 4, up 4, down 4, and draw our circle. That's a pretty easy one, and a lot of the ones on homework are easy too. So the center here is going to be the opposite of -4, which is 4, the opposite of -3, which is 3, and the radius is the square root of 9, which is 3. So we do 4, 3, we draw that first, and we go to the right 3, up 3, down 3, and left 3, and draw our circle. Now let's go back to that other problem at the beginning that had a weird radius.